Hello and welcome to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. Today I'd like to talk about athletics. Now, athletics is something near and dear to me. It's been part of my family history. My grandfather was one of the first people to play professional ball. My uncle was drafted to the San Francisco Giants. My dad played AAA ball. Athletics were very important in my family history. And there are ideas that have come down through the generations that have changed. Now, in the 1910s to 1920s, people may have an idea that you can adjust yourself or get your tendons in tune or out of tune, that you could be too slack in some areas or too tight in others. And these are general kind of old-timey ideas. And then later, there's kind of an idea that there are genetically natural-born athletes. Some people are natural-born athletes, and other people had best be left to pursuits such as art and music. Nothing wrong with those pursuits, although for people in athletic circles, it's kind of, below the B team, isn't it? So people who are not natural-born athletes, they're also said to be accident prone. So these are people who, when they try to do something athletic, they find themselves getting into an accident. So if you look at it from the perspective of, well, they're just not natural born athletes, that's kind of like saying this is from fate. And more of the old-timey idea was more, it's something that you can control. Now, I questioned this idea that it was something by fate because at times in my life growing up, people would say that I was athletically gifted. And at other times, they would say that I was unsuitable for athletics because of posture or gait or whatever they happened to see. Now, how could it be that I was at once unfit for athletics and other times a gifted so-called natural athlete? It seems nonsensical. And what it comes down to is tone and tune. So there's muscle tone and there's tune as far as the way you would tune a guitar. So to tune a guitar, you tighten the strings. And when they're at that perfect tension, there's a resonance that creates music. And the same can be said for the fascia in the body. The fascia, ligaments, blood circulation, tendons, all of this connective tissue is really what provides support and structure. And it's support and structure not only in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense. Blood reframes fascia. It remodels fascia. You can see with every pulse there is fascia that's softening and fascia webs that are being formed. And this is being informed by the blood. Emotions are carried through hormones in the blood. This will influence the fascia. It will influence where there is tightness and where there is laxity. It will change the tune and tone of the human body. Once your body loses its tone, it comes out of tune. It makes you susceptible to injury. And once one injury is there, and with that injury, not just the local inflammation, but the fear and tension that is around that injury, it can cause additional injuries up the movement chain. So an injury in the foot can become an injury in the knee, in the hip, in the shoulder, in the neck. And this affects every aspect of you. So are accident-prone people truly not natural-born athletes? Now, I question this whole idea because there are footprints from like 100,000 years ago where our distant ancestors were running at the speed of Olympic athletes today. Now, presumably something was chasing them, but athletics is the birthright. They're the birthright to all of us. This is your birthright. You are born to be able to move as an animal with athleticism and grace and poise. And I know this because I see toddlers running around. I see little kids running around without fear, without tension in the body, for the most part. And as they move, there's a grace, there's a poise, there's a suppleness. Their body wants to find alignment. Their body wants to flow and play. And you can see the movement as an expression of their emotions. These two are bound together. When a child is in a grocery store and is having a very negative experience, you'll see them arch their back, flop on the floor, kick about. At the same time, you can see that negativity is drawing them downward. At other times, you can see there's levity to them. There's happiness, there's joy, and they jump and climb and roll, and there's a flow to their movements. And what's important to remember is that this is not something that is exclusive to childhood. This is all of us throughout our lives. And so you may find that it's true that your emotional state can hamper your movements. And at the same time, your movements can alter and change your emotional state. And a lot of this lands in the connective tissue, in the fascia. It lands in your blood circulation, your microcirculation, and your ability for fascia to hold you together, to create the frame that best suits your physical expression. Sitting too much can also pull you out of tune. Now, the times when I was young, when people would say, oh, he's a natural athlete, this was in spring and summer. I was up moving around, I was playing a lot. And when they said I was not suitable for athletics, it was in winter. I wasn't moving a lot. I was sitting a lot. So sitting can pull you out of alignment. And once you're out of alignment, the tendency is people will say, okay, it's time to stretch. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Stretching through inflammation, through mental tension, yes, it can take you out eventually. But a lot of times, it's just, like, have you ever stretched and then you've had the experience where you've stretched and afterwards you just hurt? And after you stretch, actually everything tightens up even more. People will say, well, you've overstretched. Okay. But there's sometimes when you feel either nothing or you stretch and it hurts. So what's going on there? What's happening is that the movement chain itself is blocked. You're stretching just one area, and that's the result. In reality, you want to be stretching and twisting throughout the movement chain, throughout the body. And this is the way that traditional stretching was done in China, India, and other ancient cultures. And it may be a tremendous shortcut to help you regain athleticism and natural poise. You know, it always boggles my mind when people say, are you overweight? With 10 minutes a day, you can lose weight and be in great shape, just like this gymnast here. Okay, well, what is the gymnast doing? Well, the gymnast does pull-ups and then muscle-ups and does that continuously for 10 minutes. Okay, great. Now, does that apply to somebody who can do 3 pull-ups and then afterwards has joint pain? Obviously not. So one of the first things that they recommend when doing a pull-up routine is to simply hang. And by hanging with correct posture, you can help your body to come back into tune, back into tone, and only then start to increase weight, increase repetitions. And this is very important because a lot of us, especially as we get older, it's very easy to come out of tune, just like it would be to pick up an old guitar out of a basement or attic and you start to play it and you notice it's off key. So the first thing you need to do is spend some time tuning it, maybe repair or replace the strings. And the same is true with the human body. You're going to need to spend time working with the fascia. Now, sometimes that fascia can get soggy, and it's important to drain off extra water. Make sure you're using herbs to kill whatever kind of infection is in that fascia. At other times, it's important to increase microcirculation so that you know that that fascia is being well nourished. Because to simply try to stretch or change it without these internal aspects, without considering how they are going to be nourished, is to create more problems before you start. Now, I mentioned the guitar and the neck of the guitar just above where you change the tune of that guitar. Now, where is that in the human body? Do we try to stretch the back? The answer to this is common sense once you understand. If you have a sheet on the bed and you want to smooth out that sheet, it doesn't make sense to start in the middle. But isn't that what everybody does? They say, wow, I have back pain. I'm going to stretch my back. That's like having that sheet that's bunched up on the bed and just working, pulling it 1 centimeter, one foot at a time, trying to smooth it out from the center. And you can spend all day doing that, working from the center outward, and still not get it right. But you know from your life experience that the most efficient way is to take the corners and pull the corners tight, and the center takes care of itself. So where are the corners of the human body? The corners for connective tissue and fascia are found in the palms, at the soles of the feet, and in the arches of the feet, and in the neck and head. And there's an exercise I'd like to share with you that I learned from a Kung Fu master who I've admired and followed online for years before I had the pleasure of meeting him in person. And he was even so kind as to attend one of my seminars and teach all of us this method from the Hungar system of Kung Fu. And this is used to help stretch and open the fascia, to allow people to regain their natural athletic movement. So to begin this exercise, you start with your elbows attached to the ribs, and you flex your palm. Now, if you do that just naturally, you'll notice that your palms are sticking out at a 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock position. So you've got that external rotation. But then, like twisting a towel, what we're going to do is create tension by twisting. You bring the fingers, the middle finger up to a 12 o'clock position and open up the palm. And you can already start to feel if you're doing that. And you maintain the elbow to the body and you pull the fingers upward. You'll start to feel almost unwrapping in the middle of the palm. And then pulling the fingers back as you push the palms forward. Bring the elbow forward, away from the body, but at the same time keeping your shoulder blades sunk and down. You'll feel in the center of the palm an unwrapping, a stretching, and at the same time a heat that starts to come to the center of the palm. Now, in the Hungar system, they will do that and then start to make a fist using only the third, fourth, and fifth fingers. So the index finger and thumb will still be up. And doing this, you start to feel it not only in the palm, but down the top of the arm as well. Then for the feet, what they do is they rock forward and backward, move to the left and right, and then slowly circle to find that central position in the foot until the same sensation is felt. And they do this from a horse stance. And a horse stance, just like the structure in the palm, uses a combination of external and internal rotation to create a twisting sensation. And when there's twisting in the arms and twisting in the legs, something very interesting happens in the waist. The tailbone, the hips, and the pelvic girdle start to open up on their own and start to get flexible. So that when you conclude this exercise, you find yourself with undeserved flexibility. Now it seems almost like an indirect yoga, and if you were to make this observation, you would be very correct. Because the roots of this actually go back in time to the year 526 AD. Now, at this time, Buddhism had been in China, but it was a very fringe religion. And like many religions that are setting up in new locations, people were taking part of it, but they're missing some larger cultural context. So Bodhidharma, known in Chinese as Damo, traveled to China, and he arrives in the Songshan Mountains, and he sees a different remix of Buddhism. And he also sees that the monks are sitting around a lot and they're not in good physical health. And this is a problem because to train the mind, as you need to do in Buddhism, to go on these spiritual pursuits, you need a strong body, you need a strong foundation, because the mind and body are connected. You also cannot be carrying tension in the body because that creates mental tension. And you need to have a good connection between those two. So he didn't tell them, hey, the method of Buddhism that you have is a little bit off. He showed them. He sat in front of a wall, they say 10 years. And during that time, it wasn't just that he sat and stared at the wall. Obviously, he would sleep. Obviously, he would eat. And he would also do some meditative stretches, which became known as the tendon changing classic. Now, this is not yoga as you think of it today. The yoga as we think of it today is about 100 years old. This is older. And so the majority of it was meditative and using concepts in yoga, using the concepts of twisting and extending the fascia. And this was specifically designed for people who were overly sedentary. So the method from Hungar, which Sifu Sharif Bey was teaching us, has its roots with what Damo taught the Shaolin monks. Now, whether that's history or legend, it's hard to say because it went back far. And 2,000 years ago, there are depictions and writings such as the history of the Han Dynasty that show exercises that are very similar. Now, I want to move away from, is it from China, is it from India, because nationalism gets in the way a lot. Realistically, these countries border each other, and China, India, and Persia shared a lot culturally for a long time. People traveled around, and there was a cultural understanding of movement and athletics. And the understanding had to do with fascia and tendons as a whole. Twisting and extending as a whole. Some of this may have its roots in postures with shamanic origin. Again, it's hard to say, it was a long time ago. But what is clear is that doing these exercises and using these exercise concepts, even more importantly, is to understand the exercise concept, allows people who are not so-called natural athletes to regain their natural athleticism. It allows people who are too old to engage in athletics to get back into it and move better than they had before. People in their 40s through 60s are moving better than they did in their 20s. And this has to do with bringing the body back in tune to the right tone. It's atonement in a physical sense. So this tendon-changing classic, I Ching Ching, has also been studied, and it's been shown to promote pulmonary function, physical activity and quality of life, as well as emotional regulation in patients with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And it's not just for people who are sick or elderly. It's also been shown to impact static balance and flexibility in college students. And they measured this by having the students stand on one leg with their eyes closed. And this is important because that exercise is a way to measure balance. And we get our balance from three main sources. One is our eyes. We visually understand where we are in space. The second is ears. Within our ears, there are hairs with little, they're not stones, it's little bone tissue called otoliths. Auto mean ear, lith meaning stone. And as we move, these otoliths sway and they tell you where you are in space and time. Now the third is through our proprioception, through our muscle length, gravity, through understanding where pressure is on the body. Doing this tendon-changing work allows the fascia to not only extend and connect, but to communicate. See, fascia is also part of how our body communicates at a very intimate level. And when you increase that communication, your body is talking, and that allows it to perform and function at its highest level. Now, as to the concept behind this, I was recently shown by a Kung Fu master in Shanghai, Jim Sun, how to apply this in a way that is unique to you and whatever motions you're choosing to use. The core idea is to make fists and flex them inward. And then extend your arms outward until you can feel the tendon stretching. By doing this with posture and sinking the shoulder blades, you can feel that internal stretch. Then you take a deep breath in. By combining the breath with the stretch, you can start to feel where your range of motion is. And this is important because your body wants to protect itself. And if its understanding on a daily basis is that it doesn't know where the borders are, it cannot relax. Your body needs to understand where the limits of that movement are so that it doesn't hurt itself. Now, if you curl and extend, your body becomes very aware of where the limits of movement are, not in a stretch like a hurdler stretch, but in a standing normal motion, especially a motion that mimics something that you're going to do. So if you're going to be throwing a ball, you can mimic that movement while exaggerating it and shrinking, either with a fist or flexing the palm outward. And as you go through that motion, your body gets the information. This is how far it moves. This is how far it moves before it recruits down the movement chain. And once you do that, your body is free to move powerfully and with speed. See, it's not a problem of speed and power. It's that your brakes are on because your body doesn't know where the limits are. But once you take it to those limits and connect the body and using twisting motions, you can also really identify where the limits of that are. Then when you try the same movement, you can do it with complete lack of restrictions. You can do this with the palms, with the feet, whether you're walking and you just walk slowly, bringing the toe back so that you can feel the extent of the stretch. You can do this with running. You can do this with any type of movement that is meaningful to you. Now, this is the heart of the tendon changing classic. This is the heart of applying that so that you can recover from injury and you can restore yourself to an optimum space of movement, if for no other reason, so that you can think better. That was the main reason for those monks at Shaolin. But this movement type was also used in martial arts, and this is kind of an ancient proto-yoga, at least yoga as we think of it today, with the multiple asanas. What I love about this, though, is that throughout the day, without taking time, without rolling out a mat, I can simply adjust my posture using a combination of internal and external rotation, find my breath, find the limits of that motion, and immediately start moving better throughout the day. Immediately think clearer throughout the day, because a lot of the fear that the body holds that it may be injured is taken care of by going to the borders and understanding that intel, regaining that body's intelligence. The tendons, the fascia, and the connective tissue are also described as a bowstring, and there's a tensile quality to it. Shun Guanlong was my teacher for 20 years, and he described that when you train the tendons and the fascia, it's like pulling and releasing a bowstring. And when you see animals pounce or a frog jump, it's not that they put in effort to go forward. It's more like they've released something to go forward. And when your fascia start to move together, you're always moving as though you're loading one bowstring, and as you extend, you're loading another, so that the movement starts to feel more automatic going backward and forward. And this allows you to move with an effortless grace so that you're flowing rather than forcing your way forward. See, that when you feel like you're forcing your way forward, or I don't like to run, or I don't like to swim, or I don't like to jump, what you're really not liking is driving with the brakes on. And once you release those brakes, you put yourself into a state of flow that is beautiful and freeing. And the act of movement itself becomes an act of beauty. So the general process for doing this is to look to the connective tissue, look to the blood. First of all, soften. Hot baths, foot soaks, make sure the blood circulation is there. The second is to tighten and go to the edges of your movement. Curl your fists, or you can also bring your fingers to a point. And you want to be tightening up the fascia, because as you tighten one side, you loosen the other. Understand the limits of your movement. You'll find profound freedom inside of that. Thank you so much for listening to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. Try this. Let me know what you find, and email me at andrew@botanicalbiohacking.com. I hope you try this in the next week, and I hope you find strength and beauty and start to really enjoy moving in a way that you haven't moved since you were a child. Have a great day. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Miles.